Hey guys, today we're going to do a video helping you to install your 1UZ VVT-i ATEMU device, specifically in the LS400 98-2000. So let's do this. Right, so as discussed, this is going to be the installation guide for an ATEMU on a 1UZ VVT-i, but specifically an LS400. That's a 98-2000 model. Came in various countries like America, Europe, etc. Okay, so first thing I want to go through is this first page over here, and that is going to tell you your ATEMU device, what all the wire colors are, what do they do, and what do they need to be connected to. Now, as you can see from here, it's just labeling in colors down from there and going from number 1 to 12. How you look at that basically is just by looking at this device over here. You'll see it's got red, black, yellow, yellow, green, white, blue, green, and then 4 blues, okay? And that matches entirely that diagram that you see there. Okay, so that's basically how you look at it. It's really, really nice and simple. All the wires are in a row and you just go from one end and you work your way to the other. Now, the newer ones are coming in these clear packages, but some of them are still in the black cases as well. So don't be confused if yours comes in a black case and doesn't look exactly like this. It's just the case that it comes into. Don't stress too much about it. It's basically all the colors should be exactly the same. Okay, right, so looking at the wires that we have to deal with. So you've got red, which is plus B, black, which is E1, plus B is 12 volts, black is E1, which is ground, and then we've got 2 yellows, one is 2 and one is P. Now that's gearbox position indication. Then you've got green, NCO positive, that's your input speed sensor. White is NE positive, and that is from your crank sensor. Blue is oil, green is SP2, and blue, all the other 4 blues are solenoid 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we'll get into that in a minute when we go through the diagrams. Beneath that, we then have a generic ATEMU diagram. Okay, so that means it gives you all the wires that you need access to on the Toyota or Lexus ECU. It doesn't give you specifically what plug and pin location that they are in, just tells you that's the ones you need to interface with. Okay, right, so moving along, the next page and a half over here is the actual diagrams from an LS400 98-2000. Okay, now what I'm going to do is you'll see in all of these diagrams over here, there's a letter in a circle and a number next to it. That's your plug and that's your pin. Okay, so you can see there we've got D23, D22, we've got B5, B11, here we've got B9. Coming over here, we've got E16, 5, 9, and 8. Over here, we've got C17, we've got A6, and we've got F14. And then here for the park, we've got 15 of A, and for the 2, we've got 3 of A. Okay, now then, just a quick heads up, when you're looking at Toyota diagrams, you need to be very specific on which diagram you're looking at, because if you switch between an engine diagram and a gearbox diagram, these letters can change. Okay, so this one might be B in the gearbox diagram, which is specifically where this one came from, but it's not going to be B in the engine diagram. And you'll notice that when I go through and show you which plug is which on here, it's not going to make much sense. Okay, like logical sense. It's not going like A, B, C, D, E, and then F or whatever it is. You have to just basically bear with me, and I'm going to tell you exactly on here where every plug is. Now then, before I do that as well, what I'm going to do is I've got a plug in here so you can see exactly what it looks like. Okay, now the reason I've done that is I want to show you how to find the particular pin. Okay, now then, I'm just going to come in a bit closer over here now. So this is a 17 pin plug. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, gap 16, 17. Okay, so this is a 17 pin plug. There are 17 places. Now in particular vehicle, when you go through all these other plugs, you may find that there's not wires in every single location, but you need to understand that you follow the places, you don't follow the wires. Okay, that's just a quick heads up. Now, because we're looking at the back of the plug, so where you look here where the wires come in, that's actually the back of the plug. That's why we're reading from right to left, okay? If I was to pull this plug out and flip this around, then I'd be reading from left to right like you normally would. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, okay? So that's just a useful thing that so you guys can understand how exactly we're going to be finding these different pin locations. And as I said, we're not relying on the colors. The colors can change. Don't stress about the colors. Only focus on the pin locations, because it doesn't matter whether it's European, US, Japanese, whatever, the pin locations stay exactly the same. Okay, so again, please, I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not stress if the color's not the same. That is perfectly fine. Just focus on the location. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through these diagrams one by one. Okay, I'm going to show you where the plug is, and I'm going to show you more or less where the pin should be. Okay, so starting in the top corner here, we've got NE+. Okay, so that would be going to our white wire. We're going to splice into it. So you see NE+. We're splicing into it. We're not cutting it, just splicing. Okay, and NE+ is going to be plug D, pin 23. Plug D is going to be this one over here. So this is plug D, and 23, I think it's second one in on the bottom on the right-hand side there. Okay, because this is a 31 pin plug, and 23 is the second one in. 22 is the one in the very right corner. 23 is the second one in. But do count the spaces and make sure that you're 100% correct. Okay. Next up, we've got our speed sensors. So we've got the one at the back of the gearbox, which is called SP2, and we've got the one at the front, or what they call the overdrive direct clutch speed sensor, and that's called NCO. So again, SP2 plus is going to be pin 5 of plug B. NCO plus is going to be pin 4 of plug B. Now, plug B is going to be the 17 pin plug. There is a lot of gearbox wiring in this particular plug. Okay, so pretty much everything on the gearbox in this plug, I think bar one wire, which isn't related to the gearbox. Okay, so SP2 pin 5 of plug B, NCO positive pin 4 of plug B. Moving down to the solenoids now, and you can see oil over there, which is going to be this one, yeah, the blue one in between the white and the green. That's going to be your oil. That's going to go to 17 of plug B, and plug B in this case is still this plug over here. So 17 is going to be down in the bottom there because that's a 17 pin plug. Then we've got solenoid 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then 6. So what you've noticed already is that basically this whole top row is going to be completely connected to the ATEMU device, because you've got 1 is solenoid 1, 2 is solenoid 2, 3 is solenoid 3, 4 is NCO positive, 5 is SP2 positive, and 6 is solenoid 4. So you see there, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's your whole top row, okay? And then basically anything underneath is going to be disconnected, and then you've got 17, which is oil, and then there is one other wire that makes its way into your harness that is relevant for the actual engine. So please don't cut that one. That's for your clutch, for your drive-by-wire. So if your drive-by-wire stops working, you know you've cut the wrong one, okay? So those are those diagrams over there on this particular page. So relatively nice, simple, and straightforward. We'll come back to this one because it's in relation to the resistors that we've got there. Moving over to here, this is going to be our plus B and plus B1. Now, these are actually going to the same place. They have exactly the same circuit part of it. So they both get 12 volts at exactly the same time. So this is where we're going to connect our plus B for our power, or basically our red wire on pin 1 over there. And it's going to be 8 and 16. And plug E is going to be this one over here. Now, pin 1 is going to be the top right corner there. Pin 8 is going to be directly below pin 1. And pin 16 is going to be directly below pin 8. So this whole row on this particular side over here, you'll see will be thicker wires than all the rest of them. The top one is your permanent 12 volts, and the bottom two, that's your plus B1 and your plus B. Remember? So 8 is plus B1 and 16 is plus B. Okay, so those are the ones you can tap into for your B wire over there. All right, moving along here. Now remember we said E1, so that's going to be 17 of plug C. Okay, so moving along to here, this is going to be plug C, and pin 17 should be in the bottom right corner. It's going to be hopefully a thick either brown or a thick white with a black. Okay, so those are the colors that it normally is. I'm not saying that it is going to be there, but that's the one that it normally is. So if you do find a thick one, but again, remember, we're not relying on colors, we're counting, but it should be the bottom right here. That should be pin 17 of plug C. All right. Next up is STP. Now this isn't actually connected to your ATEMU device. This is obviously one that we just want to cut off. So we no longer want the card to supply that particular signal to the ECU, okay? So again, we're focusing on the ECU side here. So this is going to be connected into that plug there to provide the correct signals. When you cut wires, you're just going to fold them back and actually fold them back and put a bit of heat shrink on some of them. For instance, STP is going to give 12 volts whenever the brakes are pressed. So STP is stop light. Okay, so you don't want to leave that hanging around, otherwise it might short and then it's going to end up causing your brake lights not to work. So just bear that in mind when you do that. All right, next up is ST1 negative. Now, I don't really know why they named it that, but anyway, this is the other 12 volt signal that comes to the ECU when the brakes are pressed. So your brake switch actually has 4 wires in it. One set of wires stay connected when the brake pedal is not pressed, and that supplies 12 volts to ST1. And then when you press the brakes, that actually moves along to there, and then it supplies STP with 12 volts. So either STP or ST1 have 12 volts at the same time, not both at the same time. Okay, and that's controlled via your brake light switch, which is by your pedal. Now, what we want to do is, in order to avoid an error code saying the stop light switch is a problem, you need to connect ST1 to 12 volts. So what I advise people to do is take ST1 and connect it or splice it into either plus B or plus B1. So you want to cut the ECU side. So the car side, you're going to leave loose and fold back and put a bit of heat shrink to protect it from any shorting. And then you're going to take the ECU side and you're just going to splice it into one of those 2 wires. Okay. Now, this is pin 14 of plug F. Plug F is this gray plug on the end here. All right. So that's that one over there. Now, moving along down to here, we now have our gear position indication. Okay. And that's when I was talking about here earlier. We've got 2 is the yellow and P is the yellow. Okay. So in this case, we've got 2, which is pin 3 of plug A. All right. Now in this case, plug A is going to be this one over here. So this is your 28 pin plug. For our purposes, this is going to be plug A. Okay. So that's A, that's B, that's C, that's D, that's E, and that's F. Okay. I told you it wouldn't make a lot of sense. It's all backwards when you're trying to using different diagrams from there. All right, okay, so 2 is going to be 3 of plug A. So that's going to go into here. So again, it's just going to literally be 1, 2, 3. That's your STP. So that's the one you want to cut. Oh, sorry. That's the one you want to join to your first yellow wire. So that's going to be 2. Then coming across here, we're then going to have park, which is pin 15 of plug A. So again, it's going to be that one over there. So again, you're going to count along and it's 15. It's usually about in the middle here, I think, is where the 15 is, if I'm not mistaken. So it's about in the middle. Obviously, the 3 is right there and the other one is right there as well. Okay. Right. So those are your 2 gear position indicators. Okay. So that basically covers all the wires that are in there that you're going to be attaching. We've covered things like the ST1 negative, which you need to supply with the 12 volts to stop your ECU throwing an error for stoplight switch. Then we're going to come on to the resistors. Now, obviously the resistors, unless it's a European ECU, because it's the only one I've tested, but basically if you don't connect these resistors, you're going to get code 1755, 1760, 1765. So normally I sell it with a kit with these resistors personally, and I tell you to connect it so you can actually get rid of these codes. Now, it doesn't affect performance in any shape or form. It's just that it's nice to get rid of all of the codes, okay? Now, luckily on the European ECUs that I've tested so far, having these not connected, although it does throw the codes up, it doesn't cause a check engine light. And as far as I'm aware, I think the US ones will throw a check engine light with these ones, with these codes showing. And I think probably a JDM one might not show the codes either. But again, I haven't tested that myself. I can only vouch for European ECUs, which is the ones that I've worked with. Okay. And obviously American, I've worked with those as well. And I know that these codes cause a check engine light if they're not connected. Okay. So they basically, to eliminate those, you're going to connect them between SLT plus minus, SLU plus minus, SLN plus minus. Now, if we move over to our diagram here, again, focusing on plug B, which is that one over there, we've got SLU positive and negative, SLN positive and negative, SLT positive and negative. Okay. Now, there is one caveat with these, and that is they get incredibly hot. So you cannot connect these and sort of just screw them onto a plastic thing or let them, just push them in and amongst a bunch of wires, because they will melt plastic and they will more than likely melt the insulation on wires. The best solution for these is usually to put them onto an aluminium plate of some description to allow them to dissipate heat, and then see if you can screw that aluminium plate onto like a body panel, metal body panel, not a plastic body panel, obviously, and so forth, and they can then dissipate the heat hopefully through the body as well. And just make sure that they're not going to be touching anything, because they will get super hot and they will melt stuff. Okay, so just bear that in mind. And again, all you're basically going to do is you're going to cut these 2 wires, so 7 and 13. And when you count these wires out, you'll actually notice that 7 is directly above 13. So it's like basically they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 7, 13. And then you've got 8 and 14. And then you've got 9 and 15. So it's this bottom row of 6 over here. You're going to take those wires, you're going to take 7, you're going to cut it, and you're going to attach it to one side of the resistor. You're then going to take the other one, which is 13, you're going to cut it, and then you're going to connect it to the other side of the resistor. Okay, so obviously you might need to extend the wires depending on where these are going to end up being mounted, obviously to keep them out of danger and obviously let them dissipate their heat without sort of getting anything melted there. But that's basically it. So that's now you're installed. So now if you've gone through everything, you've installed the 3 resistors, you've installed the ATEMU device, you've removed everything else that is in relation to the gearbox. So all of these things like SP2 negative, NCO negative, all the rest of these need to be actually cut from the system. So you'll see they say cut, 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 and all of those over there. So you just get rid of everything in relation to the gearbox and how that works over there. All right. Now then, once you've got it installed and you flick the ignition on, what the thing is going to do is at the back here, when you have one with the black plastic, it's actually a cut-out hole so you can see the LED. On these ones, obviously, because it's clear, you can see the LED flashing through there, so there's no need to cut a hole in there. You can see there is a button just inside there as well. Now, the device has a couple of modes because the device is used for more than one particular ECU. So it's used for 1JZ, 2JZ, etc., etc. So basically, we default at mode 1. That's the one that I've put it on all the time, and it doesn't seem to cause any issues, and it seems to run absolutely fine. But what you can do is you can go through the modes. So if you have access to a dyno and you want to try the different modes, by all means go ahead. You can report back, and obviously I'll add on to the video in the description if anybody gives me any feedback on that. But basically that's it. So you can go into there. If you turn the ignition on, you're going to get the flashing, and it's just going to go 1, pause, 1, pause, 1, pause. If you press the button, it's going to go into mode 2. So it's going to go flash, flash, pause, flash, flash, pause, flash, flash, pause. Okay. And you press the button again, and it's going to go mode 3, mode 4, mode 5. Press it again. It's going to go back to mode 1. Okay. So that is really, really simple. Okay. Now then, obviously you are then, if you have access to live data, a nice good thing to do is to make sure that the gear position indication is working. So again, if the engine is above 850 RPM, it should be going into 2 of the ECU. If it drops below 800 RPM, it should be going into park. Okay, so if you have live data that you can read via text stream, you can see the gear position indication. Obviously, if you lift the revs up a little bit, up to 1000 RPM, the gear position should say 2. If you let it drop down again, the gear position should say park, okay? And it'll keep flicking over and changing, okay? And that's basically it, all right? So that is pretty much all you need to do from your side. Like I said, if you don't have a dyno or whatever, leave it on 1 because it's the one I've always used and I've had no issues with it whatsoever. Make sure it's in mode 1. If you've connected everything on here, make sure that all the codes are gone. So remember, if you've connected everything on the actual ATEMU device, but you haven't connected the resistors, you should only get the 1755, 1760, and 1765. Connect the resistors, they go away. And like I said, as standard, I always give you guys the resistors as part of the kit because obviously it's a case of you being able to then remove all of the codes. And if you do have to diagnose a problem with the engine, you're not going, oh, what's this, what's this, what's this? They're gone. If you have a problem with the engine like a mass airflow or coolant temp sensor, it's going to be correct and you'll be able to get the codes and you're not going to wonder what these particular codes are. Okay? And like I said, you can check the operation if you've got live data. Obviously, that would be nice and you can see the gear position indication moving along and you'll be able to see that there's all the diagnostic codes are gone and that's all correct. Okay. All right, so hopefully that's been super helpful for you guys. I try and do this as and when I can. We've been doing mostly harnesses for these and not selling them separately, so I don't know why I haven't done a video before, but anyway. If you do have any questions, please feel free to comment down below, or you can get us at Phoenix Engine Management on Facebook, and you can message us there with any questions that you might have. But thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.